Greetings everyone. Myself, M. Priya, Assistant Professor in the Department of Industrial Biotechnology, Bharat Institute of Higher Education and Research. I'm going to handle the course Bioorganic Chemistry. Now, I'm going to deliver a video lecture on the topic active and the passive transport. Active transport and passive transport. So, our cell membrane is a semi-permeable membrane. So, semi-permeable membrane means it allows selected materials to move in and out of the cell. So, any material or any solute has to move in and out of the cell only through this cell membrane. So, it is based on two types of transport called as the active transport and the passive transport. So, active transport. So, active transport is the process of transferring substances into or out of and between the cells using energy. So, this is an important point. So, active transport, it would be using energy. And in this type of process, a specific molecule is transported from low concentration to high concentration, that is against its concentration gradient. So this type of transport is called as an active transport. So the cell membrane is the one which will be acting as a semi-permeable membrane. So through that cell membrane only molecules has to move in and out of the cell. So based on the molecule size and based on the molecule's nature, some of the molecules would be easily permeable. Some of the molecules might be difficult to get through the cell membrane. So active transport and passive transport. So based on this only the molecules would be transporting in and out of the cell. So more specifically, this active transport, it is needed for moving the molecules in and out of the cell, but it will be using energy. So here, and one more thing, it would be moving the molecules against their concentration gradient. That is, the molecule would be transported from a region of lower concentration to a higher concentration. And the second type of transport is the passive transport. So here, substances that are too large or polar diffuse across the lipid bilayer on their own through membrane proteins called carriers. So as told before, so some molecules would be too small so that they will be easily permeable. They will be easily cross the cell membrane. But some molecules, they will be too large or they will be polar to diffuse across the lipid bilayer. So lipid bilayer means cell membrane is made up of bilayers, two layers of lipids. So through that two layers of lipids only, every molecule has to pass through. So substances that are too large or polar diffuse across the lipid bilayer on their own. So through the membrane proteins, some of the membrane proteins would be present called carriers, permeases, channels, and transporter. So these proteins would be acting as the transport proteins to move the molecules in and out of the cell, especially molecules which are too large. And unlike active transport, here this process does not involve chemical energy. So this is the major difference between the active transport and passive transport. So in the active transport, they involve energy. So they need energy. Whereas the passive transport, they does not require any energy. So the passive mediated transport is totally dependent upon the permeability nature of the cell membrane. So since your energy is not required, it is entirely dependent on the permeability of the cell membrane. So which in turn is function of the organization and characteristics of membrane lipids and the proteins here. So this is the active transport and the passive transport. So this is the active transport. So here the molecule would be moving against the concentration gradient from low to high. They'll be moving so against the concentration gradient. So this is the active transport diagram. So here this is the passive transport. So the passive transport, so it does not require energy. It will be moving from a higher concentration to lower concentration, so there is no need of energy. So active transport, they are moving from low to high, so only they'll be needing energy, whereas the passive transport, it does not need any energy. So instead they'll be using proteins, the transport proteins such as channel proteins, carrier proteins would be helping the molecules to move across the cell membrane. So this is called as the passive transport. So types of passive transport. So there are 4 types of passive transport. So passive transport means they do not energy. They do not need energy. So there are 4 types of this passive transport. They are diffusion, facilitated diffusion, filtration, and osmosis. So these are the 4 types of passive transport. So diffusion. So diffusion means the process of the net movement of solutes from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration is known as diffusion. So net movement of solids. So some solids would be moving from a region of higher concentration to lower concentration. That is called as the diffusion process. So the differences of the concentration between the two regions. So they are moving from high to low region. So there will be the differences in the concentration, and they are termed as the concentration gradient. And the diffusion continues until this gradient has been vanished. So the diffusion, so till this gradient vanishes, so till that the concentration gradient would be present, and diffusion occurs down the concentration gradient. So this is the diffusion process. So your extracellular space contains high concentration of solutes, whereas the intracellular space here low concentration. So hence the solutes move from extracellular space to intracellular space. So till there is no concentration between the spaces. So this type of transportation is called as the diffusion process. Facilitated diffusion. So the process of the movement of the molecules across the cell membrane through a special transport proteins that are embedded within the cellular membrane is known as facilitated diffusion, or it is otherwise called as carrier mediated diffusion. So here it would be it needs the help of some special transport proteins. So special transport proteins would be helping in the movement of the molecules across the cell membrane. So that type of diffusion is called as the facilitated diffusion. So many large molecules such as glucose, they are insoluble in lipids, and they will be too large to fit into the porins. So therefore, it will bind with its specific carrier proteins, and the complex will then be bonded to a receptor site and moved through the cell membrane. So molecules which are large and which cannot be easily permeable through the cell membrane would be transported through this facilitated diffusion by help of special proteins, special transport proteins. So this is the diagram for facilitated diffusion. So here carrier proteins. So some of the transport proteins called carrier proteins is helping the molecules to move inside the cell. So movement of the solutes from extracellular space to intracellular space is carried out through a carrier protein and down its concentration gradient. So here it will be helpful for transporting the larger molecules, especially this facilitated diffusion is helpful for transporting the larger molecules. And with the help of carrier proteins, they will be moving the molecules. Filtration. So filtration is the process of the movement of water and solute molecules across the cell membrane due to hydrostatic pressure generated by the system. So depending on the size of the membrane pores, only solutes of a certain size may pass through it. So this type is called as the filtration process. Here, molecules will be moved across by an hydrostatic pressure. So the membrane pores of the Bowman's capsule in the kidneys are very small, and only albumins, so albumins are the smallest of the proteins, can filter through. So on the other hand, the membrane pores of liver cells are extremely large to allow a variety of solutes to pass through and can be metabolized. So this is called as filtration process. So this is the filtration. So the permeate, retentate, and feed would be present. So based on the molecule size, they may be separated. And osmosis. The last type of passive transport is osmosis process. So osmosis is the type of diffusion of water molecules across a semi-permeable membrane. So they'll be moving from a solution of high water potential to a region of low water potential. So that is called as the osmosis. So here it is also like diffusion process only. Here diffusion of water molecules across would be occurring across a semi-permeable membrane, and that too they'll be moving from a solution of high water potential to a region of low water potential. So a cell with a less negative water potential will draw in water, but this depends on other factors such as solute potential and pressure potential. So solute potential means pressure in the cell, for example the solute molecules, whereas the pressure potential means the external pressure that is in the cell wall. So based on this only the osmosis process will be occurring. So there are so based on three solutions the osmosis process is defined. So the first type of solution is hypertonic solution. So in hypertonic solution, there are some solute molecules outside the cell which causes the water to be sucked. So in that direction, which leads to the shrinkage of cell. So here water molecule and hypertonic. So solute molecules should be present outside the cell. So which should be causes the water to be sucked. So it causes shrinkage of cell. So it occurs in the hypertonic solution. Okay, one osmosis process through hypertonic solution. Here, since some solute molecules are present outside the cell gets shrinked. So this is called as the osmosis in hypertonic solution. And isotonic solution. So in isotonic solution, there is equal concentration of solute on both the sides. The water will be moving back and forth. So in the isotonic solution, here the arrow mark is showing on both the sides. So water molecules should be moving in and out of the cell. So it will be henceforth the water will be moving back in the forth. So this is called as the isotonic solution. And the third one is the hypotonic solution. So in the hypotonic solution, there are less solute molecules outside the cell. So since salt sucks and the water will move inside the cell, so the cell will gain water, they grow larger and they finally burst. So it occurs in the hypotonic solution. So here less solute molecules would be present outside the cell. So the more water will be entering inside the cell, which may causes swelling of the cell in the hypotonic solution. So these are, so osmosis is explained with three types of solution: hypertonic, isotonic, and hypotonic solution. And then active transport. So types of, so now we have seen types of passive transport. Now types of active transport. So there are two types of active transport: primary active transport and the secondary active transport. So primary active transport. So primary active transport, also called as direct active transport. So which directly uses energy to transport. So we know active transport would be involving energy. So in the primary active transport, they directly use that energy to transport the molecules across the cell membrane. So example here is sodium potassium pump. And the second one is the secondary active transport. So the secondary active transport, or otherwise called as co-transport, also uses energy to transport molecules across a membrane. However, in contrast to the primary active transport, there is no direct coupling of energy, ATP. Instead, the electrochemical potential difference, which is created by pumping ions out of the cell, is instrumental here. So here directly the energy will not be used. Instead, they'll be using electrochemical potential difference. So this is about the two types of active transport. And then antiport. So in antiport, two species of ions or solutes are pumped in opposite directions. They'll be pumped in opposite directions across a membrane. So that is called as the antiport. So two solutes would be traveling, it will be passing through two different in the opposite directions. So one of these species is allowed to flow from high to low concentration, which yields the entropic energy to drive the transport of the other solute from a lower concentration region to higher one. So since two molecules are moving in opposite directions, so each would be flowing from two different concentrations. So obviously one would be allowed to flow from region of low to high to low concentration. So obviously the next molecule would be transferred from a region of low concentration to high one. So here example is the sodium calcium exchanger or antipotar, which allows 3 sodium ions into the cell to transport 1 calcium outside. This is the example of antiport. The next one, symport. So symport, it uses the downhill movement of one solute species from high to low concentration to move another molecule uphill from low concentration to high concentration. So which would be against its electrochemical gradient. This is called as the symport. So this is the diagram about symport and antiport. So symport are both the molecules, they will be transporting the same direction, whereas in the antipotar, 2 molecules would be transported in the opposite direction. This is the symport and this is the antiport. The sodium potassium pump. An example of the active transport is the functioning of sodium potassium pump. So in mammalian cells, the sodium and potassium gradients are the 2 major components of the electrochemical gradients across the plasma membrane. And the cell maintain a lower intracellular sodium concentration and higher intracellular potassium concentration with relative to extracellular space. Hence, for the generation and maintenance of the electrochemical gradients for sodium and potassium, it requires sodium potassium ATPase. So, which is an ion pump that couples ATP hydrolysis to cation transport. So, it also helps to set the negative resting membrane potential, which regulates the osmotic pressure to avoid cell lysis. So the sodium potassium ATPase belong to the P class ATPase, which is commonly found in the plasma membranes of higher eukaryotes. And this transmembrane protein consists of 2 types of subunits. One subunit is a 110 kilodalton non-glycosylated alpha subunit that contains the enzyme's catalytic activity, and it contains the binding sites for ATP, sodium and potassium ions. And one more is a 55 kilodalton glycoprotein beta subunit of unknown function. So the function of beta subunit is not known. The smaller beta subunit has one transmembrane domain that stabilizes the alpha subunit, and it is important in membrane insertion. These are the functions of the alpha and beta subunit. So the alpha subunit has 8 transmembrane alpha helical segments and 2 large cytoplasmic domains, whereas the beta subunit has a single transmembrane helix and a large extracellular domain. So the protein may function as an alpha beta 2 tetramer in vivo. The sodium potassium ATPase is also called as the sodium potassium pump because its main function is to pump 3 sodium ions out and 2 potassium ions in. So both direction across the membrane in the presence of the hydrolysis of ATP. So active energy, it requires ATP energy. So the overall reaction is given as 3 sodium ions in plus 2 potassium ions out plus ATP. So with the help of water, the product will be 3 sodium ions out plus 2 potassium ions in, and energy would be reduced, ADP plus PI, phosphorylated. So this is the overall reaction of the sodium potassium pump. So the important feature of the sodium potassium pump ATPase is the phosphorylation of a specific aspartate residue of the transport protein. So which phosphorylates only in the presence of sodium, whereas the resulting aspartyl phosphate residue is subject to hydrolysis only in the presence of potassium. So hence it has 2 conformations named E1 and E2. So the working of sodium potassium pump. So the first step would be the protein in the E1 state has 3 high affinity sodium binding sites and 2 low affinity potassium binding sites, which are accessible to the cytosolic surface of the protein. So hence E1 binds with 3 sodium ions inside the cell and then binds ATP to yield an E1 ATP 3 sodium plus complex. So this is the first step. So the first step is here. So ATP binding would be occurring. So the first step is ATP binding would be occurring. So the first conformation, it has 3 sodium plus. So it will be involving energy. So first formed is E1 ATP 3 sodium plus. And the second one is ATP hydrolysis produces ADP, and a high energy aspartyl phosphate intermediate would be formed here. The second step, formation of a high energy aspartyl phosphate intermediate would be provided here. So E1P.3Na would be formed. And the third step is this high energy intermediate relaxes to its low energy conformation, will be forming E1P.3Na plus and releases its bound sodium ions outside the cell. So yeah, third one, sodium transport would be occurring. And so E2P now. So now it would be the turn of E2. So E2P binds two potassium ions from outside the cell to form an E2P2K plus complex. So next it would be binding with phosphate ions, sodium potassium ions. So E2P.2K. So potassium ions would be formed here. And the next step would be the phosphate group is hydrolyzed, yielding E2.2K plus ion. Yeah, phosphate hydrolysis would be occurring here. And the final step, E2.2K plus changes conformation and it releases its two potassium ions inside the cell and replaces them with the 3 sodium ions, thereby completing the transport cycle. So this is the working of the sodium potassium pump. So this is the entire working principle of the sodium potassium pump. So first, three sodium ions would be binded. So this is the extracellular fluid and this is the cytosol region. So transporter will bind 3 sodium from the cytosol. So that is the first step. And then energy would be required. So phosphorylation by ATP favors conformational change. So phosphorylation would be occurring. And the third step is sodium is released and the potassium would be binded. So when phosphorylation is happening, so 3 sodium ions would be moved and the 2 potassium ions will attach to the surface. And then the fourth step, dephosphorylation would be occurred, which favors original conformation. So once the dephosphorylation occurs, the potassium is released into the cytosol and the cycle would be repeated. So this is the working of the sodium potassium pump. And then the next example of active transport is exocytosis and endocytosis. So they transport both exocytosis and endocytosis. They transport larger molecules such as proteins and polysaccharides and even very large particles. So exocytosis means a process in which material inside a cell is packed into vesicles and excreted into the extracellular medium. And endocytosis means a process in which the plasma membrane invaginates or fold inward to form a vesicle that brings substances into the cells. So exo, here materials inside a cell would be moved outside, whereas endocytosis, a material, so your plasma membrane would be folded inward to form a vesicle that brings substances into the cell. The substances present outside the cell would be entering inside the cell through the endocytosis, whereas exocytosis, the molecules present inside the cell may be leaving the cell. So these are two types of active transport, exocytosis and endocytosis. So both they transport larger molecules in and out of the cell. So endocytosis. So endocytosis is generalized term for whenever a cell takes in larger molecules and other particulate matter available outside the cell. So it does so in 3 different ways. So under endocytosis, there are 3 different processes: phagocytosis, pinocytosis, and receptor-mediated endocytosis. So we'll see these 3. So this is the endocytosis. So phagocytosis, it takes solid particles inside the cell, and pinocytosis, it will be taking liquid molecules inside the cell. So whereas the receptor-mediated endocytosis, it would be very specific. With the help of receptor, it would be moving the molecules inside the cell. So phagocytosis. Phagocytosis is otherwise mentioned as cellular eating. Why it is called as cellular eating means because it would be taking solid particles inside the cell. So it occurs when the dissolved materials enter inside the cell. So it occurs when the dissolved material, solid substances enter the cell. So the plasma membrane engulfs the solid material, forming a phagocytic vessel. So it will be engulfing the solid material. And the next one is pinocytosis. So pinocytosis, it is otherwise called as cellular drinking. So it occurs when the plasma membrane folds inward to form a channel, allowing dissolved substances to enter the cell. So when the channel is closed, the liquid is encircled within a pinocytic vessel. So this is the difference between phagocytosis and pinocytosis. So in the diagram also it is mentioned. So phagocytosis, a solid particle is present outside the cell. So this plasma membrane will identify the solid particle and it will be forming a vesicle. The plasma membrane will be forming a vesicle. So through that vesicle, the solid particle would be attached to the cell membrane and it would be forming a vesicle inside this. So for example, a bacterium. So in phagocytosis, it has identified the solid particle, a bacterium, and this bacterium would be immersed within a cell membrane. It would be forming a vesicle called as phagosome. It will be forming a phagosome. So in this vesicle, the solid particle would be trapped. So this is one type of endocytosis process. So in the pinocytosis, a fluid. So fluid would be taken through the cell. So here also, here the extracellular fluid is present. So here the cell membrane would be folded inward. The cell membrane would be folded inward to take the fluid inside the cell. So it will be forming a vesicle. It will be forming a vesicle, and this fluid will be taken inside the cell. So this is called as the phagocytosis and pinocytosis. So phagocytosis is called as cellular eating because here only solid materials will be taken inside the cell, whereas pinocytosis, it is called as the cellular drinking because here liquid substances would be taken inside the cell. So here the channel is closed, the liquid is encircled within a pinocytic vesicle, whereas here it would be forming a phagocytic vesicle. And then the next one is the receptor mediated endocytosis. So here the receptor mediated endocytosis, it would be very specific. So here the chemical binds to the receptor protein being brought into the cell. So here the chemical, so why this receptor mediated endocytosis is very specific because here the chemical will be binding to the receptor protein. So before being brought into the cell, so it will be very specific. So the receptor protein is present means it will accept or it will bind only the specific molecules inside the cell. So so only it's called as the receptor mediated endocytosis, and it is very specific. So in this diagram, say receptor mediated endocytosis. So here a coated pit would be formed. The plasma membrane will forming a coated pit, and there will be receptor proteins present on the surface of the cell membrane. So there will be receptor proteins. So to the receptor proteins, the molecules will come and attach. So it will be very specific. It will be very specific. Only specific molecule will come and attach to the this receptor. So so receptor coated pit. So everything would be forming a coated vesicle inside. So with this vesicle, the molecules should be entering inside the cell. So this type of process called as the receptor mediated endocytosis process. So these are the three types of endocytosis: phagocytosis, pinocytosis, and receptor mediated endocytosis. So phagocytosis. So the injection of bacteria or other material by phagocytes and amoeboid protozoans might be occurring. So especially the bacteria and any other material would be engulfed by the phagocytosis process because it will be engulfing the solid particles. So there are 4 steps in phagocytosis process. They are recognition, engulfment, digestion, and expulsion. So these are the 4 steps in the phagocytosis process. So first they will recognize the particle, and then it would be engulfed by the cell membrane, and third one, inside the vessel it would be digested and it would be expelled. So these are the 4 steps in the phagocytosis process. pinocytosis. So pinocytosis is the movement of liquid through the membrane of a cell, whereas phagocytosis is the movement of solids, as I told. So in pinocytosis, or otherwise called as cell drinking, so the cell engulfs extracellular fluid, including molecules such as sugars and proteins. So this is phagocytosis and pinocytosis. So these materials enter the cell inside a vesicle, although they do not mix with the cytoplasm. So epithelial cells in capillaries use pinocytosis to engulf the liquid portion of blood at the capillary surface. So the resulting vesicles travel across the capillary cells and release their contents to the surrounding tissue. So while blood cells remain in the blood. So steps of pinocytosis. So first, formation of little vesicles that takes sips of extracellular fluid. So first, formation of little vesicles would be there, and then membrane would be fold inward and small volumes of fluid are taken up. So membrane would be fold inward and small fluid would be taken inside the vesicle, and important for uptake of nutrients. So cells in the digestive tract, particularly intestine. So this is the pinocytosis. So here the liquid is there in the cytoplasm, and it will be forming a vesicle, and it will be entering inside the cell. So receptor mediated endocytosis. Receptor mediated endocytosis is a process by which cells internalize molecules or viruses. So as its name implies, it depends on the interaction of that molecule with a specific binding protein in the cell membrane called a receptor. So receptor will be present. To that receptor only the molecules will come and attach. So this is the receptor mediated endocytosis. So here clathrin coated pit would be present. So the receptor will be present on the surface of the cell membrane. So to this receptor only the molecules will bind. So clathrin coated vesicle. And the next one is exocytosis. So exocytosis is a process occurring in plant and animal cells. So that involves moving materials within a cell to the exterior of the cell. So this process requires energy, and it is a type of active transport. So exocytosis is the opposite of endocytosis, in which substances are taken into the cell. In exocytosis, membrane-bound vesicles containing cellular molecules are transported to the cell membrane. So here. So from inside the cell, the molecules, the materials, it's moving outside. So this is called as the exocytosis process. So in this video lecture, we have seen the differences between the active and passive transport. So we have so active transport, they need energy, whereas the passive transport, they do not require any energy. And we have seen the types of passive transport. We have discussed about diffusion, facilitated diffusion, filtration, and osmosis. And active transport, primary active transport and secondary active transport. And then we have seen different examples of this active transport. We have seen about sodium potassium pump, exocytosis, and endocytosis process in detail with explanation. Thank you.